Go Ducks! Back it up for me here. Good luck.
Love it. And the two-time defending champs in the Pac-12 against the four-time defending champs in the Big Ten. Oregon visits Columbus. How about Ryan Day, still unbeaten during the regular season? College Game Day crew. That's the lead.
The game is going to kick off about 5 minutes after noon between Ohio State and Oregon. Pac-12 needs a little credibility. Lost 14 straight regular season games on the road against top 10 opponents.
And didn't get off really to a great start, top to bottom last week in week one. And this is a game that they need. And at the very least be competitive. If you're an Ohio State fan, you're not overly familiar with Oregon. One thing you're going to have to realize is offensively, they have a lot of speed. C.J. Verdell in the backfield, Johnny Johnson, Micah Pittman. These guys can all score in a blink of an eye, very similar to what Ohio State has. The key to me will be Anthony Brown, the quarterback. The transfer from Boston College, got a year last year. We got some reps in Joe Moorhead's offense. How will he play against the secondary from Ohio State? Let's be candid. They're a bit vulnerable. Can they find some big playability? Because, in my opinion, they're going to have to score with Ohio State and with that Ohio State offense. I don't think that the Ducks will slow them down in Columbus.
And the storyline that we'll be watching on College Game Day, Kayvon Thibodeau, best player in college football in my judgment, hurt an ankle against Fresno State. Will he be able to go for the Ducks against Ohio State? And the only top 10 matchup in all of college football.
State heavyweights colliding in Columbus as well. Number 12, Oregon. Number 3, Ohio State. Buckeyes 9-0 in this series all time. C.J. Stroud, 4 touchdowns in his first collegiate start against Minnesota a week ago. A lot of talk about whether or not Kayvon Thibodeau will go.
Everything's at stake for us. It's a heavyweight battle. I think the Pac-12 slept on a lot over the entire country.
We're going to show them, like, we the big dogs. We're going to show them, like, what Big Ten football is really about. It's not like all soft, all pass and stuff. It's more like we're going to come at you.
Are you ready for this? 'Cause I'm coming for you.
It's at home, so we got to defend our stadium.
Buckeye Nation, it's been a while since they've been in the stadium, and that's going to be a big deal. We need a big, loud crowd.
The word underdog, those are things that we don't really pay attention to. We don't look at it as that.
They're really fast,
athletic,
super shifty.
We're just gonna have to be on our P's and Q's.
50-plus yards on a touchdown pass from C.J. Stroud.
We're going to have to play fast and physical to stop C.J. Stroud.
He's more than just a guy that can make a good throw. He's a guy that can run the offense, put him in the right play. All in all, just a very complete quarterback.
He's a baller, and we don't have to worry too much about him.
We love matchups, especially non-conference matchups that you normally don't see.
Best of the Big Ten, best of the Pac-12, last of the conferences, so it's a lot at stake.
What can you say? It's why you come to a place like Oregon. This is certainly one of those big games that a lot of people are really looking forward to watching.
If you're not excited for that, then I don't know what you need to be hyped up for.
All right, let's take a look at tonight's playbook brought to you by Mike's Hard Lemonade Seltzer. Jesse, Minnesota had a real hard time stopping C.J. Stroud in the big play a week ago. Why is that aerial attack so difficult to defend?
There's a lot that scares you when you think about Ohio State's offense, but I think what makes them so dangerous, it's the receiving combo of Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. These are two guys that could be taken in the first round of next year's draft. There's not a cornerback tandem in the country that can lock them down over the course of a game. You've got to double team them. Minnesota didn't do that last week. And there's a lot of things Ryan Day and Ohio State offensively do to put you in a bind. Here's a 2 tight end set. Minnesota thinks they're running the football, so they load the box with 8 guys. Now that puts Garrett Wilson in the slot one-on-one with a safety. That's not good. Now there's a slot defender. He needs to get out and he needs to redirect the receiver, but he's focused on the run. He's got his eyes in the backfield. The play action freezes him. That allows Garrett Wilson to gobble up that 10 yards of cushion with the safety, runs a post route. It's not even close. He's 5 yards beyond the safety when he catches that ball, and it's an easy score. Later in the game, another 2 tight end set. This time, 9 guys in the box for Minnesota. Chris Olave in the slot one-on-one against the safety. And again, that slot defender, he needs to redirect and slow down the receiver, but his eyes in the backfield, he's peeking, the play action freezes him. Chris Olave now with the chance to run a smash route. There's a coverage bust on the back end for Minnesota. Both guys run with the post. Chris Olave turns this up, makes the guy miss and scores. Oregon needs to play big zone defenses to double team number 2 and number 5. They got to have 7 guys in coverage, but you can only do that if you get pressure with 4 guys. That's why Kayvon Thibodeau has to play and he has to be effective, because if he's not going, Oregon can't get home. They have to blitz. And when you blitz, that means there's more one-on-ones outside for Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, and that just spells doom for Oregon's defense.
Kayvon Thibodeau is good enough to get pressure on the quarterback with 1 guy, and they need that in their defense if Oregon's going to have a chance. So you talk about the pass game of Ohio State. You can't double everybody at all times. One way you get around that is if the quarterback's on his back, then you don't have to worry about it. And that's what Thibodeau does for this Oregon defense. This guy is 6'5", 260. Now you'll see a tight end for Fresno State. The tight end gets a chip on him, then the tackle has him. If you do this, though, you lose your tight end or your running back ability to get out into the pass game. But if you don't have help for your tackle, if you don't chip him, you have about a little over 2 seconds to get rid of the ball. In this game early on against Fresno State, he had a couple tackles. He had this sack fumble, had another, create another turnover in this game. But you've seen him go down. A healthy Thibodeau is the same that Buckeyes fans have seen out of a Chase Young, the Bosa brothers, so they know the difference and what that looks like when you have a dominant defensive end on your defense. Thibodeau doesn't play for Oregon. It could be a long day for that defense.
He's the ultimate disruptor, right? Number 1 on Mel Kiper's big board. Obviously a huge factor in tomorrow's game if he can go. You take a look at the numbers when Kayvon Thibodeau plays. I mean, guys, the numbers are stark. When he's on the field, they get to opposing quarterbacks. The pressure is there on a much more frequent basis.
He can rush the passer, but what we saw last year from him, he's much better now against the run as well. So he's the complete player defensively that impacts an offense.
Well, Ohio State and Oregon may be the biggest ranked game tomorrow in college football.
Playing Oregon, Ohio State 14.5-point favorites against the Ducks. America loves the Buckeyes at 14.5. And Joey, it's probably because that duck, it's going to be swimming upstream all afternoon. They're trying to win this game against Ohio State for the first time in 10 tries, trying to hand Ryan Day his first regular season loss in 24 games. And the Ducks are trying to win a game with at least being a 14-point underdog for the first time since 97. So basically, quack is whack in Columbus. Good luck to the Ducks.
Yeah, go Bucks. For my second pick, I like Notre Dame minus 17.
Last thing here, Reese joined us last week, and he said he thought Oregon could go into Columbus and get a victory. They had to come back to beat Fresno State, and they did. And we know Thibodeau is a talented player. He's number 1 on Mel Kiper's board. He was in a boot, and Coach Cristobal said that he's day-to-day. We don't know if he's going to be able to go. What kind of chance you give the Ducks Saturday in the shoe?
Well, Anthony Brown's the key to me, the quarterback. They have everything else that they need. Even if Thibodeau can't go, they've recruited so well on the defensive side. But the key is Anthony Brown. Ohio State still has to prove that they're an elite defense. And until they do, teams that can score and teams that have speed are going to be a challenge for them in a battle where they have to outscore people. Their offense is legit. Ohio State's offense, it was Stroud in at quarterback, the receivers they have, the backs they have, maybe the best line we've seen in years. All that is great. The concern I think that they have is how good are they in the secondary. And with Oregon's speed, I think that gives them a chance to be very competitive. Tough to go into the shoe, as you know, and win the game. But does Anthony Brown, the quarterback, make enough plays to stay step for step with C.J. Stroud? That's the mystery to me in that matchup. And handling the atmosphere in Columbus, how do they do with that traveling across the country?
Dynamic was the word you used for that offense. Their last 3 touchdowns took 6 plays and took less than 2 minutes total, man. They can score from anywhere on the field.
Oregon and Ohio State, they match up today. Take a look.
Stroud delivers down the field. Caught. Touchdown, Bucks.
They're as explosive as an offense as you can get. The quarterback has time to throw the football. Those guys can run all day.
He looked really poised and calm out there, and they're just loaded with 5-star talents.
I mean, when you have someone as good as, Chris on the other side, it makes it a lot harder on defenses to guard just one person.
His Hader goes down. Noah Sewell blasting through for the Oregon defense.
We're going to have to play fast. We're going to have to play physical, handle a lot of adjustments as well, but it's just going to take all of us.
They're really switched up. They come downhill and make a lot of good tackles, even in the second level.
3 down, 4 down, they can blitz, they can drop. So a lot of versatility there.
We're going to come at you as hard as we can. Y'all stop it. Keep coming until y'all, bust us in the mouth.
Talking about Oregon, Ohio State, and Kayvon Thibodeau may not be in that matchup, but he is in Columbus. He posted it on his Instagram story, and then he deleted it.
Right.
So how important is he for that matchup if they want to win this matchup?
Oh, Kayvon Thibodeau is the most disruptive defensive force in the FBS, if not all of college football. I mean, he's a game wrecker. He's a guy who you have to game plan your whole defense around that man right there. He's a guy that every time you come up to the line of scrimmage, you have to know where he is. And he's so versatile, so athletic that he may even go out there on the perimeter and cover Chris Olave. I mean, he's just that good. In 2019, this guy blocked a punt in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah. That's just how athletic this young man is. So if he, it's going to be a good day for defense. If he's not, whoo, it might be a long day.
It might be a long day. And speaking of the long day, you got C.J. Stroud out there, freshman, inexperienced, played well last week, had some shakeups.
Yeah.
If Kayvon is out there, what things can C.J. Stroud kind of rely on in order to kind of make things easier for him? Because, like you said, if Kayvon is out there, he's going to make his life more difficult.
I tell you guys, look, the key to all of this is Ryan Day. Ryan Day is one of the best play callers in all of college football. He's like my top 5. He's the guy, he's going to keep his finger on the pulse of the situation, just like he did in week 1. Because don't forget, CJ kind of started off shaky against Minnesota, didn't look that well, but then the second half, he seemed to catch fire. That's because of Ryan Day, the way he schemed in the second half, the adjustments that he made based on how they were playing them. Right. He's one of the best in-game adjustment coaches that's out there. So I think that's the biggest element in this game is the way Ryan Day focuses on that defense, see how they're trying to attack C.J. Stroud, and then he'll make adjustments.
Man, the start time. All right, let's just talk about it. Oregon at Ohio State. Buckeyes favored by 14 this morning, 14.5 now. It is a noon Eastern time kickoff on Fox. And for those of you unfamiliar, Oregon does not reside on the Eastern time zone. They reside in the Pacific time zone. It's a 9 a.m. kickoff for them. Quack, quack. Welcome to Big Fox Saturday. I love the early window, but I grew up in Eastern time zone, and I'm in Central now, so it's not a big deal for me, but it is. I mean, if you're living out there in Sacramento or you're living in Pocatello, Idaho, hello, Pocatello, first mentioned on the show, this is ridiculous. You're eating bacon and eggs and you're watching actual games being played. You're not talking about it at a tailgate, and it's still several hours away. So, man, as far as the game goes, because we can't change the kickoff time, these are 2 of the premier brands in the sport. This is one of the most beautiful out-of-conference matchups of the year, but they're 2 of the most premier recruiting brands in the game, too. And if you've been following recruiting, Ohio State's always there. Mario Cristobal and his staff have been killing it. They're just out working folks. And they're going into several states. It's not just a 1 or 2 state effort. They don't just hawk all of Southern California. They go all over the place. This would so help them. It's kind of that situation that Miami found themselves in, only this game should be more competitive. But it's one of those, if you win, that's wonderful and all is well. All is great with the world there. But even if you're competitive, that's enough to sell in recruiting. So you've got an opportunity 2 ways here. Ohio State, it's the opportunity that they really didn't fully stamp last week, and that is the opportunity to announce themselves as a for sure bona fide national championship contender. Because if you watched them last week, and I told you they're playing Alabama Saturday, you'd pick Bama by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Now, that wouldn't be the way probably that it plays out in a point spread, but that's what you'd think. So there's still a long way to go and a long way to grow for Ohio State. But for Oregon, this is a chance to measure yourself against one of the best rosters in America. Oregon is not a typical Pac-12 team. Independent of what last week's result led you to think you know, they are not a typical Pac-12 team. So anyone that thinks this is some blowout from jump and, you know, a Pac-12 team is not going to compete with Ohio State, no, most of them wouldn't. Oregon would fit in very well in several other major conferences, and they'd be a contender. That's not a prediction on the game. I'm about to make that, but just be heads up. So they both played fairly good teams in week one. Minnesota was a good team. Fresno State's a lot better team, I think, than most people realize. And there was mild freak out about both offenses. You know, C.J. Stroud overthrowing receivers early. I'm getting text messages at halftime of week one. Is it time to pull the plug? Well, Ryan Day did not text me that, and he did not pull the plug. And they're going to be okay. Believe it or not, C.J. Stroud going to be okay. And he doesn't have to do nearly as much as most other quarterbacks because he's got fighter jets all around him. He just make good decisions. He'll be okay. But with Oregon, you know, there were questions about them too. I think it had a lot more to do with the offensive game plan going in. But then an Oregon Duck fan would counter and say, nah, we have failed to live up to the expectation level I've had for our offense for several situations now, several games under Mario Cristobal. I just want us to use our weapons more. Okay, well, in any event, for the folks who are just telling me, oh, we weren't good enough in week one, that doesn't really tell me much. You got to zoom in, and you got to give me specifics about week one. So dive into where this game, this Oregon-Ohio State game, is going to be won or lost. First thing I'm looking at, Oregon's defensive back play, when you talked about this game in the summer, was looked at as a glaring vulnerability. I don't view it that way. In fact, I think Oregon's defensive backs, corners and safeties specifically, they're getting a couple of them back this week, I think they'll be able to, relatively speaking, match up with Ohio State's receiver core almost as well as any team they're going to play in the regular season or the Big Ten championship game if they make it there. I'm not telling you they're going to go toe-to-toe and not give up anything. I'm telling you athletically and speed-wise, those corners and safeties are not bad for Oregon. Where Oregon's going to have to shore things up considerably is pass coverage at linebacker. They got some supremely talented linebackers, but they're young and still inexperienced in that facet of the game. It's just not something you do a whole lot at the high school level. That is where that game could be won or lost. It's where it could really loosen things up, shall I say, for Ohio State's passing game. You can live, if you're Oregon, you can live with those big-time receivers for Ohio State just making plays, just being better than your guys. You can live with that. What you can't live with is making C.J. Stroud do nothing more than throw the ball 5 or 6 yards over the middle, and then watch his receivers run free another 20, 25 yards after catch because you had missed tackles, you had missed assignments or missed reads at linebacker. That's one thing. The second thing, which is imperative and we can't know it at this point, is the status of Kayvon Thibodeau, who may be one of the best players in the country. There's no maybe to it. He's one of the best players in the country. He has the ability, he's a supremely talented pass rusher, to change a game. One of very few players in America you would say that about. And he sprained his ankle last week. He's questionable right now. Oregon needs him to win the game. Feel pretty confident in saying that. Number two, and the way we do these games, if there's a 2-touchdown spread, is we spend a lot of time talking about the underdog because the spread is what it is for a reason. I don't need to tell you all the advantages Ohio State has. We want to paint a picture of how the upset could possibly happen. Oregon needs to do more stuff than Ohio State. There's a lot that Oregon needs to do. This is not a pick-em game. It's a 2-touchdown spread for a reason. So Oregon's got to force the issue a little bit more. They probably have to win the turnover battle. They probably have to take more risk offensively, really. A lot of these things have to happen in conjunction. But their offensive game plan last week will not get it done. Now, I think they understand that. I don't think they're using a mirror image game plan here, but Oregon's got to give themselves a chance. Last week's game plan, and to be frank with you, the kind of game plan they've gone into battle with a few too many times as of late will not get it done. Now, this makes you uneasy. If you're a guy like Mario Cristobal, I know it makes you uneasy. But if you've ever taught a kid to ride a bike, like, you know, you push them and you push them and you push them, the training wheels are off and you're kind of guiding them. Eventually, though, there comes a time where you got to take your hands off their lower back and you just got to let them glide. They may fall, they may not, but there's only one way to learn. You eventually got to let it go. And with Oregon, when you got the kind of skill they have, and I know good and well they have it, it hasn't been fully utilized. This is the week you got to do it. And it's high risk, high reward. Absolutely it is. But like I said, the default setting is not you being on equal footing with this team. You're going into what will be a packed house, extremely hostile environment, the most incredible atmosphere your kids will have played in. You've got enough athletes. You've recruited well enough. And so you got to take some risk. Ohio State doesn't. They don't have to take as much risk. They're in their backyard. They got the better roster. You got to take some risk. You got to let go of the bike. And you got to let your horses run. It's what you got to do. You got to let your athletes play. And you got to use a little bit more of that 53 yards they give you as opposed to just the 100 vertical. You got to get those guys in space more. And you got to trust Anthony Brown. You may not feel supremely confident about it, but you got to trust him because this is going to be the fastest team that Ohio State faces in the regular season. But it doesn't matter if you don't use all that space. And that's a welcome. That is a welcome idea. By the way, if Kerry Combs in that defense is you playing in a phone booth. They welcome that. He'd love you to do that. In fact, he'd get out of the way and let you line up in any formation you want to, in bunch sets and whatnot. He'd love for you to do that. Run into that brick wall all day. What he doesn't want is he doesn't want to see you all of a sudden with those wider splits. He doesn't want to see those receivers taking up that entire field. And he doesn't want you distributing the ball to a number of different playmakers, including those backs out of the backfield. That's not what Ohio State wants to see. They're interested in watching you play the way you have played, to be perfectly clear. So thirdly, as it relates to last week, here's where we started, here's where we'll end before we make the prediction. As it relates to last week, I am pretty confident in saying that Ohio State went into the Minnesota game and Oregon went into the Fresno State game, and the offensive game plans are what a lot of people use as a term, and it's very overused, but I think it's accurate here. They had sort of vanilla game plans. They had do enough and survive in advance type of game plans. And both of them almost got bit by it. A lot of you don't think this happens. This does happen. Whatever these passing games are capable of, this is where you'll find out about it. Because no one in Columbus, Ohio had the Minnesota game circled to unveil every facet of their passing attack. They had the Oregon game circled. No one in Eugene, Oregon looked to the schedule and said, boy, we're unloading on Fresno. No, they said, here's what we're going to use against Fresno. Here's everything we're going to use in week 2, and we're going to let the chips fall where they may in Columbus. That is why I expect a better offensive showing from both teams, or if it's not a better offensive showing, they're going to end up turning the ball over, which I think will ultimately decide a couple of scores in this game, by the way, because there will be more risk taken through the air by each team. Even Ohio State, I fully believe that. So, Jesse, let's take a look at what Vegas thinks, and let's take a look at what the late kick model thinks. The model performed pretty well across the board last week, by the way. So the noon kickoff here, the Caesars line currently is Ohio State minus 14.5. Our number is even bigger. Our number is at Ohio State minus 16.5. I expect a different level of play from Oregon offensively this week, detailing and reasoning being a lot of the things I just said. Because of that, I will pick Ohio State to win the game. I actually think the number is going to come inside 2 touchdowns. I think they'll be more competitive. I think, quite frankly, not Ohio State, they won't be surprised. I think some of America will be a little surprised at how effective Oregon is Saturday. I think a lot of people expect them to get blown out. Or at the very least, they expect it to be competitive early and then Ohio State stretches it late. I think Oregon's going to play 4 quarters with them. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they'll be very competitive. And if those turnovers do start going their way, they absolutely have a puncher's chance of winning. Give me Buckeyes to win. Give me Ducks to cover.
No, but I was chalking that up to definitely. Yeah.